We start in Syria, where the regime has taken full control of Aleppo for the first time in more than 4 years. The final convoy of people left the rebel enclave from the eastern part of the city late on Thursday. More than 37,000 people have left for places like Idlib and rural Aleppo. Syrian state television showed pictures of regime supporters celebrating the retaking of the city. In an address, the army declared victory over the city.
The General Command of the Army and Armed Forces announced the return of safety and peace to the city of Aleppo after the last of the terrorists and armed groups have exited. This is a strategic and important development in the fight against terrorism and a blow to those who support the terrorists.
Abubakr al Shamahi is in Gaziantep on the Syrian border. He says that although the fight for Aleppo is over, the conflict could now shift to Idlib.
Over the past year or so, since the Russian intervention in 2015, things have turned in the regime's favour. And now, now that they have cleared Aleppo of the opposition, the idea will be to go to Idlib, which is where most of those opposition fighters have been sent to. And that can work in the regime's favour in a number of ways. Obviously, putting your opponents in one area naturally gives you a greater chance of simply taking them all on at the same time. And the other thing is the infighting. One of the main reasons many on the opposition side have pointed out for the loss of Aleppo was infighting, and putting many of these opposition groups into Idlib, which in areas of which are dominated by groups like Jabhat al-Sham and other quite extreme groups, will possibly also create more infighting. And also the presence of those groups in Idlib will give the regime and its backers the opportunity to attack quite heavily and then say, well, look, Jabhat al-Sham, which is obviously formerly affiliated to Al-Qaeda, we're simply just attacking Al-Qaeda, we're simply attacking terrorists. So it creates a useful excuse for them and a useful reason for them to attack Idlib. But I've mentioned the backers of the regime, and you're talking about Russia principally and obviously Iran as well. Now, Russia swung this battle. The Russian Defense Ministry said they carried out 71,000 airstrikes just in the past year. At the same time, though, they are now sitting around the negotiating table, at least with the opposition's backer, the principal backer, Turkey. They met in Moscow earlier in the week, and now there seems to be at least some moves on the parts of these big countries to have a peace deal or some sort of negotiations going on. And the Turkish Foreign Minister, Mevlut Çavuşoğlu, was in Jeddah, and he had this to say about the possibility of future peace deal.
At the end of this meeting, we should all come together in raising our voice and call for facilitation of immediate, unconditional and unhindered humanitarian access. There should be a nationwide ceasefire and flow of humanitarian assistance to the people in besieged areas. The regime must return to the negotiating table for direct talks with the opposition for a genuine political transition in Syria. We should send out a strong message that the foreign militia should leave Syria right away.
And Abubakr, putting aside the politics, what about the Syrian people? What is next for them?
Well, you know, peace would obviously be very important for the Syrian people and would help them greatly. This has been a debilitating conflict now, over 5 years of conflict and hundreds of thousands of deaths. But Aleppo in itself and Syria is divided. In Aleppo, you can see it. There's often talk about the divisions between those in the city versus those in the countryside, between the upper classes and perhaps the middle and lower classes, depending on their affiliations and their support for the protest movement and what became known as the Syrian Revolution. And you can see on the streets in Aleppo, there are thousands of people celebrating the regime's victory. They see that as a victory over terrorism, a potential return to stability. But of course, on the other side, you have 21,500 people. That's the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights' figure on the number of civilians who died in Aleppo during the battle for the city, and most of those have been in the rebel side. You've got bombed out areas, a huge amount of suffering that's happened, and obviously those people have had to then leave their city. This is going to create a huge amount of resentment, and the question is, for those people, will Assad A, be be able to rule Syria. And for those people who've now had the experience of going out against him and seeing the potential that he can be overthrown, will they simply now lie down and just accept that they've lost, or will they carry on fighting?